So this is very much my second presentation about whether it's possible to know God. Can you know God? Through nature. The great German theologian Rudolf Otto wrote a seminal book that's called Das Heilige, the idea of the holy, it's usually translated into English, in which he talks about the ways in which God can be perceived through the world around us. He calls it by a phrase that's a Latin phrase, and he uses Latin in a sense to sort of give a sense of the otherworldliness of what it is that he's actually talking about. He says it's mysterium tremendum et fascinans. Now, mysterium tremendum et fascinans can be translated in a number of ways. In simple English, a mystery which is both tremendous and fascinating. Back in the 18th century, people looked at nature like this, and they developed what they call a sense of the sublime, the idea that nature was both attractive yet slightly horrific and intimidating. And the great romantic poets, Wordsworth and so on, would write about waterfalls and great mountains reaching up, because it's very much a sense that those experiences are otherworldly, that they are so acute on your sensations that somehow you're taken away from the very sense of ordinary which is around us. And Rudolf Otto reflects on this, and he reflects on the Latin word numen, and numen is usually a Latin word that's used to refer to a spirit in something. And he develops a word that we in English know as numinous. I've always wanted to make up words myself, and I'm very impressed that Rudolf Otto managed to do so. And what he meant by a sense of the numinous was a sense of suddenly being taken out of yourself as an ordinary thing. In my last presentation, I talked about Martin Buber, and I talked about that emotional intimacy that comes from the ich du moment. In a sense, Rudolf Otto's talking about something quite similar, where suddenly time seems to stand still, and it's very wonderful and very attractive. The great 16th century mystic, Saint Teresa of Avila, when she describes of her encounter with God, she describes it not as a wonderful thing, but as a painful, acutely sensual thing. And she describes what is known as the transverberation of her heart, that there's a feeling of such intense pain that it's awful, but you desperately want it at the same time. And that's what Otto is trying to get over to us with this idea of mysterium tremendum et fascinans. We're attracted to it, and that's the fascinans, but at the same time it's appalling, it's awful, it's a nightmare. And when those great 18th century and romantic poets talked about the sublime, and they tried to talk about nature, what they were really getting at was some sort of sense of the emotional acuteness of encountering something that is not just empirical or mundane or ordinary. Now, is that meeting God? Is that the same as meeting God? If you go to the great cathedrals, my local one is the Anglican Cathedral, Liverpool, and if you stand there and if you look up and you get a sense of otherness, you do get a sense of being drawn into this noumenal experience. And this noumenal experience, this almost encounter with spirits, the noumen, that's what Rudolf Otto's getting at. Can we experience? Can anybody experience? Is that something that's all to us? Teresa of Avila was, after all, a great mystic and saint and spent half her life in prayer. So for her ability to do it is perhaps not something that we can all share. However, when you look around, and you look around here at the beach, when we're here, and you look at the great cliffs, and you look at the powering waves, you look at people swimming out there in the sea, in the cold and the iciness, and you do get a sense of something that's so intense and acute that you're both drawn to it, yet it's awful. Now, Rudolf Otto calls that das Heilige, the idea of the holy, and that's what he talks about in that book. So I commend it to you as one of the great opportunities to explore the nature of the religious experience. Hope you've enjoyed that. Here I am at the beach. If you have liked the video, feel free to comment, subscribe to the channel, take care of yourself, and get yourself to somewhere where you can get a sense of the sublime. Take care.